Well, welcome to the Bylund Clinic Podcast, where we explore the intersection of education, psychology, and mental health. I'm your host, Dr. James Bylund, clinical and educational psychologist, and today I'm super excited to be joined by Kait Feriante, hopefully said that correctly, CEO and co-founder of Redwood Literacy. And today we're going to have a conversation about evidence-based practices for students with learning disabilities. So, Kait, maybe just to start, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about yourself and Redwood Literacy. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Really grateful to be here. So I am a mom to three kids, one of whom has dyslexia and dyscalculia. I'm married to someone who has dyslexia and was diagnosed as an adult. And my husband and I are longtime educators. We started our teaching careers in Chicago, and spent time in the public school system and then the charter school system. And very early on in our teaching careers, we found that we had a lot of smart kids in our classroom who were struggling with foundational academic skills. And we were really green teachers, and so we really wanted to help, but we didn't really have the skill set yet to know how to help them. So through that journey of seeing student needs and not knowing how to fill them and wanting to make sure that I was doing right by my students. Both my husband and I became dyslexia specialists, learned a lot about, how misunderstood dyslexia is and how underserved that student community is often in most school settings. And we started Redwood Literacy in 2018, so it's been about 8 years now. And Redwood is dedicated to providing best-in-class services to kids with dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia and their families.
That's awesome. I mean, such a huge need, and as somebody with dyslexia myself, I can sort of your firsthand experience be able to empathize with the 8-year-old who's a smart kid but struggling to read and really wondering why and sometimes kind of overgeneralizing and thinking, gosh, if I can't read, am I just not smart? And to have folks out there like you and your husband doing this work is huge, very much needed, and parents are oftentimes struggling to find the right resources for their kids. So it's amazing that you guys decided to take this on.
Yeah, thanks. It's been such a journey. We're really grateful for it. It's taught us a lot, and it is, getting to talk to parents about supporting their kids they're always great conversations because you're providing hope when maybe you have felt overwhelmed or like there isn't an answer.
Yeah, and that sounds like a lot of the parents that we meet in our clinic too. And obviously, we really focus on assessment and diagnosis and making recommendations, and we provide some services, but oftentimes then having to refer out to other providers or connect families with other resources in order to be able to meet that need. Maybe walk us through your services a bit, from sort of an initial contact to intervention to ongoing support that you guys provide.
Yeah, so we work really hard to make the process pretty streamlined for parents as parents ourselves. We've got three kids with a lot of things going on after school. There's a lot of, we know parents are busy and juggling multiple priorities at once. So if you're picking up the phone and asking for help, we want to make sure that we are meeting you where you're at and providing value. So we do a lot of partnerships with professional referral providers like yourself. We have, relationships all over the US, and whenever a family calls, if we don't provide the comprehensive evaluation, so we can connect them with the right provider in their area who can do that testing, get that diagnosis, which is such an important part of the process. I like to tell parents you don't have to wait to get started on academic intervention till you
No.
have the diagnosis in place. And in fact, I tell parents all the time, don't wait. If your child's struggling, get them some specialized tutoring and do the best that you can. And then as you get more information through the full evaluation process, then you can maybe make tweaks to that service according to what you find. But I just tell parents, don't wait. The longer you wait, the more complicated the journey is, and it's
Yeah,
never too early to give kids foundational academic skill support.
absolutely.
So Redwood, we may try to make it really easy for you. So parents call us. We have, some of our most expert people on our phones. So when you're talking to someone on the Redwood team, when you call, you're connecting with someone who really knows the dyslexic brain well, who's worked with, hundreds and hundreds of students personally, and who can really hear what you're describing and be able to provide value even in that first 15 minutes, whether it's answering one of your burning questions or helping you see something that you're not seeing or helping helping you realize that you actually are taking steps, like encouraging you, like, yes, this is the right step. You're asking for the right help. And then from there, we really have an entry point for anyone. So we have free resources. So if you're calling and you're like, I don't know if it's dyslexia yet. I'm not ready to invest a lot of money, but we are ready to invest some time in providing some support for our kids. We've got resources for you to do at home with your child. If you know that your child is struggling and you are ready to get started with that evidence-based, really focused intervention, and we guarantee results. So every single session, we're taking data. All of our teachers are certified special education teachers, and then they have additional certifications on top of that for dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia specifically.
Amazing.
But we are looking every single session at data points. Every month, you're going to get a written report that shows exactly what your child mastered, what is coming up, and if within 3 months we're not seeing really significant progress in the areas that we're working on, we're going to be transparent with you about that. We have a variety of different curriculums to choose from. Sometimes it's an instructor change, sometimes it's a dosage change. So the services are pretty flexible as far as like scheduling. You can do small group, services that are a little bit at a lower price point. You can do really targeted, individualized that are, it's completely scheduled around your family's rhythm. So there's a lot of flexibility in what the services look like and how they fit into your life. We have in-person services in the Chicagoland area, Nashville, and Albuquerque, and then otherwise it's, through an online tutoring management system. But really at the core of it, we're providing targeted intervention to produce dramatic academic outcomes for your student with dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, regardless of where they're starting on their journey. Sometimes we're getting kids at the end of their high school careers who are needing really targeted support. Sometimes we're starting with kids when they're 4 or 5, as soon as the parent is noticing that they're struggling. So wherever you are in that journey, we can meet you where you're at and design an intervention plan around what you need most.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, to be able to offer so many different options for families that that are have a child that has dyslexia is amazing, and everybody's coming at it from a different point. I mean, some kids have more severe needs or less severe needs, or the resources and time involved in being able to support your child that has a learning difference. It can certainly vary a lot across families, and it's amazing that you guys are able to provide all of those options. Now for a family just sort of starting out on this journey, what do they really need to understand about evidence-based practices versus non-evidence-based interventions for dyslexia?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you can find out everything you need to know with a few Google searches. So I want parents to know it's not hard to make sure that the approach your child is getting is the right approach, but it does take a little bit of research and time. And we have, blog posts that walk you through this. We have something called a parent support program that has a free version that provides 9 steps. These are the steps we recommend that you take. But I think high level thinking about if you have a dyslexia diagnosis, or even if you don't, but dyslexia runs in your family, your child's really smart, but really struggling with foundational reading skills, then you need a program that has not just research behind it. I mean, research-based curriculums are awesome, and I don't mean to discredit them. Anytime you have a new approach, I think especially right now, there's a lot of innovation happening in the educational space that I think is awesome, and I think a lot of kids are going to benefit from it. But the difference between research-based and evidence-based is evidence-based programs are programs that have, several third-party reviews and extensive study of are these practices that, yes, are indeed more effective for the dyslexic brain. And so, the gold standard is to look for evidence-based curriculum that are designed specifically for a dyslexic student. There are multiple, organizations that provide lists, but with 15 minutes of good research, just even by searching that specific term, you can find out a lot. And a lot of times, schools will say that they're providing intervention, but even just asking one good question as a parent about really pushing a little bit, specifically, what program are you using?
Yeah.
What's the training of the teacher delivering the program? What's the progress monitoring look like? A few good questions can go a long way to just make sure, because if you're investing, financially, or even if you're just investing time and your child's investing their energy to do this thing, you want to make sure that it's working. And I'll say too, we've worked with thousands of students at Redwood since 2018, and the reason we keep adding curriculums to our tool belt is that no matter how amazing a curriculum is, it doesn't work for every kid.
Yeah.
So, just because the school is offering evidence-based, they have one great curriculum, if the progress monitoring data is showing, I just got a report from, my daughter's school that said her IEP goal, there's little to no progress. What are we going to do about it? We're going to keep doing the same thing.
No, I'll see that so much. Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and then the districts will run out and they'll buy a program, right? Usually based on cost effectiveness, right? Like the program doesn't cost a whole lot, very minimal training required, so that they can sort of hand it off and somebody can read the script and kind of provide the intervention. But I like the questions that that you suggested, right? Because it's not just about like the program itself. It's also about the individual providing the intervention and their level of training and knowledge. You mentioned like the flexibility to be able to shift to another program if you're not making appropriate progress, because we see that a ton too, right? We've got kids, with IEPs and they're not making much progress, and again, year after year we're making the same recommendation for the exact same program and the exact same number of minutes. And what you mentioned too about progress monitoring, and maybe we can kind of come back around to that in a minute too, is so important, right? Because we want to stay nimble, right? If a kid's not responding to the intervention, we want to be able to assess, why are they not responding and what changes we need to make. And that's where I see a lot of times with the school-based services where they're sort of limited in that they've got one program, and they're not very nimble, and the person providing the intervention might not have the training to be able to recognize why this isn't working and what changes that we may need to make. I think I was in an IEP meeting a month ago, and the teacher actually said something to the effect of, "I've been directed that this is the program I have to use." Even if that person had other training, knowledge, or skill to be able to adapt. So. No, that's huge. Now, obviously, you guys do a lot of work in the dyslexia space. Do you guys provide interventions for other types of learning differences too, writing and math?
Yes, yeah. So we really started, and one more thing I want to say to what you just said. I think one thing that I want to encourage parents to remember is, regardless of how amazing your school is, because the same report that came from my daughter's school, I mean, it's an amazing public school. We have been so blown away by what an amazing school community. They've been wonderful to our daughter. They treat every student with such respect. And also, it's a public school system that is a part of a large institution that has a limited amount of resources. So I think I think sometimes we have really high expectations of schools to provide specialized intervention to every kid that they see. And it's same in I use the medical and now the medical world. Like when I take my kids to the pediatrician once a year to make sure that they're healthy. And, this last year, I had two kids who are going through some, health journeys that have required us to see specialists. And through that experience, I've been reminded of, a dyslexia specialist has put hours and hours and hours into really learning how this beautiful brain type is wired and what kind of instruction sets it up for long-term success. And so it's okay to have to supplement with some specialized support. And I understand that sometimes it takes creativity. What are the ESA funds like in your state? A lot of providers can take HSA funding. Like, you can get really creative. Again, we have a blog post on creative ways that families are paying for Redwood services and investing. And so I just not that you don't advocate at the school level, you do advocate to make things better for everybody. And also, I think we have to meet public schools like the story you told. Sometimes it is just that they don't have the capacity to give your child the best
Yeah.
And of course, as parents, we always want our kids to have the best.
Right. No, for sure. It's a great analogy, and I agree with you. 1,000%. Right. Is sometimes we do need to connect with somebody who is a specialist in the area that our child needs help, and sometimes the sort of quote unquote general practitioner at school can't always meet all of those needs to the level that we want for our children.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
To your question about reading and math, so we started really focused on dyslexia and reading, and then over the years, oftentimes you'll have a student who struggles with reading and writing, or with reading and math. Not always, and I want to be really clear with parents, right? Your child can really struggle to learn how to read and be very, very gifted at math, and vice versa. But there's a common enough overlap that we wanted to be able to meet the student kind of more comprehensively. And we have a nonprofit side now called Everstone Academy, based out of Chicago. And Everstone continues to serve a very broad demographic of really any student who learns differently. They're meeting them where they're at. Redwood is kind of the future of Redwood, where we're really focused with Redwood Literacy specifically, is focused on foundational academic skill building for kids specifically with that dyslexic, dysgraphic,
Mhm.
dyscalculic learning profile. So it's really specific, which allows us to, really be the best at that, and be able to guarantee academic progress for those types of learners. And so it's a similar process for written expression and math, right? You need to look at what are the evidence-based practices that have been proven over time across environments to be really effective for teaching writing and reading and math to these type of learners. And then how do you have multiple tools in your tool belt so that if a student is stagnating in progress, there's another approach to try.
Yeah, for sure. Now you've written about the six non-academic keys to success for dyslexia. Can you tell us what those are?
Yes, so there was a 20-year study done by Frostig and their team, and they studied what are the non-academic attributes that set neurodivergent learners up for long-term success. And I love this, especially for parents, because, learning how to teach your dyslexic child how to read, you definitely can do it. You can learn those skills, and we've seen parents do that over and over again, but sometimes it's too much. You don't have capacity for that. It's becoming an expert in something, which requires a lot of hours logged. The six success tricks based on this 20-year study, these are things you can work on with your kids in 5 minutes a day while you're driving them to school. It's very low hanging fruit, and yet they make massive difference. Self-awareness is the first one, and I tell parents too, it's like working through this, like you're going to grow as a human as well. It's not just going to benefit your child, but these are attributes that when you take time to develop in yourself, they're just going to make you a more successful person. So learning how to be really self-aware and being able to, see your strengths and your weaknesses with radical acceptance and appreciation. That's the first step. If you can't do that for yourself, you're going to really struggle being yourself, and you're going to struggle, interacting with others. Then things like proactivity, perseverance, goal setting, knowing how to use your resources. I tell parents whenever a student works with Redwood, they're going to get that academic instruction, but they also get these attributes explicitly taught every single session, not every single one, every single session, but we're constantly rotating, because I tell kids, it's like you're going to be with Redwood for a short amount of time. That's our goal, right? But then you're going to have a dyslexic brain for the rest of your life. So you need to really know, you need to understand who you are and how you learn, and you need to be able to respectfully self-advocate for yourself, first in the school environment, then in the professional environment, to make sure that your intelligence and what you have to contribute is able to be seen and appreciated. And then emotional coping strategies is the sixth one, which again, we all benefit from from working on.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, to be able to kind of build the resilience that's required, for somebody who has a brain that learns differently to be able to navigate what's can be a very challenging environment in K through 12 education, and come out the other side knowing that they're smart, capable people, and have resources that they can tap on in order to overcome some of the challenges that they may face. That's wonderful. I mean, I always sort of tell parents that as a parent, our goal is to make sure that our kid, graduates high school, feels that they're smart, capable, and that they're loved, and if we can get them to the other side, and not have them fall, victim to the trap that somehow if aspects of school are hard, that means that somehow, there's something wrong with me or I'm not capable. Like that's the pitfall that we really want to try to avoid, with our kids. Because, a lot of individuals with dyslexia, once they get to the other side of that, and they can explore their areas of interest and passion, that they can really thrive. And we want to make sure that they're ready to do that once they get to the other side of K-12 education.
Just because your child struggles in school, like it's such a unique season of life, it does not mean that by any means. I mean, I'm a high school dropout myself, which I like sharing with families. I think, especially as a parent, and I fall into it too, it's like anytime we see our child struggle, it causes us to worry, I think, and feel fear for their future. And yet, being dyslexic in elementary school is really hard because what do we ask kids to do in elementary school? You're building all these foundational academic skills for, 7, 8 hours a day. However, NASA actively recruits dyslexic thinkers because of the strengths that come with having a dyslexic brain. So it is not a disadvantage. I don't mean to diminish the fact that, yes, they usually do make school harder, but being successful in school is not equivalent with being successful in life.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Now, I know you've done some work collaborating with universities and working on curriculum development, and I'm curious, what's sort of on the cutting edge here in terms of evidence-based practices?
Well, I want to be clear that I'm not deep in the research world. I'm deep in the practitioner world. That's where I spend most of my days is really figuring out how to build programs that move kids academically and also work in real life communities. But I do get to work with a lot of talented people. And I think one of the themes I see across the board. I mean, if you're following the science of reading movement across the country right now, that is going to support dyslexic brains because we have a massive literacy problem in the United States right now. And outside of dyslexia, right, outside of neurodivergence, we just have not had evidence-based, high-quality instructional materials in schools over the last 30 years. And that was my experience when I got to my first public school classroom in Chicago. I was not given a curriculum, and I was 22 years old. And I had, 18 neurodivergent students in my classroom all day, and I was responsible for their academic growth and their well-being, all the things. So we need, and teacher burnout rates, all the things. We need to protect teacher energy for the most important things, which is building relationships and providing individualized instruction to students, and high quality instructional materials is really a theme I see right now as a response to just the really poor quality tier 1 and tier 2 literacy instruction that's been happening in schools. So we're going to see a lot of dyslexic kids benefit from that, because if you're getting a more structured, systematic approach that's aligned with a scope and sequence of skills, and there's progress monitoring built in, every student's going to benefit. As far as what I've seen so far, dyslexic thinkers usually still need some supplemental specialized instruction in reading and writing to truly be at a place where it's not a burden and not something that's holding them back. So high quality instructional materials is something I'm seeing, and then also accessible materials. So, some of the best in class curriculums, ones that we use, like the Wilson Reading System, for example, is really wonderful, and it requires a lot of training to get there. And the kids who struggle the most or have a more severe form of dyslexia are still going to need that level of intensity. But I think that a lot of dyslexic kids can make more progress if we are able to take that expertise and create accessible, high quality instructional materials that more people can pick up and deliver. Yeah. And that's a trend I see, with AI and with technology. It's not so much not putting kids in front of the AI, but really using the AI to help us create more accessible teacher, materials, and help protect teacher energy for the most important things, that individualized instruction.
Yeah, for sure. Now, obviously, you guys, you provide evidence-based intervention for kids with dyslexia and other learning disabilities. You've talked about sort of the 6 non-academic keys to success, and you guys obviously really focus on the sort of the whole child in that way, right? So in the work that you're doing with kids, how would you define sort of meaningful progress for a student that comes to Redwood Literacy?
Great question, because I think I say progress over perfection a lot in my work at Redwood, especially when we're talking about data collection and because not everything that matters can be measured. And I think it's kind of looking at the data, the black and white data that can be collected and we can look at in a written report, and also the holistic kind of well-being and energy level and engagement level of the individual, which is harder to measure, but you see it, you know it's happening, right? So the first step is restoring that confidence, because to what you said earlier, so many dyslexic individuals think that they're dumb in elementary school if they don't get help, often in middle school, high school, and oftentimes if they don't get someone who comes alongside them and helps them understand themselves, helps them understand themselves, they carry shame all throughout their life. I know a lot of dyslexics in their 50s and 60s who still carry that embarrassment of I'm not smart when they are very, very smart. You learn, you know that immediately in having conversation with them. So I got off track. What did you ask me?
Just about like how would you define meaningful progress
Yes.
for the kids that you're working with?
So when we look at progress, we are looking at that restored confidence first and foremost in themselves, so that they can then make the dramatic academic progress, which their confidence and their engagement, which also comes, through building that relationship with the instructor, matched with that specialized skill set, we're going to see that academic progress. So it's that mix. We're looking, like I said, we take data every single session. We're looking, on a monthly level, on a quarterly level. We're responding to that data by making changes as needed, whether it's an instructional change or a curricula change. But our goal is to create independent readers and writers, and kids who have the foundational skills themselves, and have the ability to ask for help when they need it, know how to use technology to help them in the right kind of way, so that they can go into a general education setting, go into a professional setting, and feel very confident in their reading, writing, and math skills. We don't want those skills to be something that hold them back. They don't have to be, I tell kids, you don't have to love math, or you don't have to become the best at math in the room, but you need to feel confident in your understanding of it, so it's not something holding you back and not something causing you shame or embarrassment for the long term.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the idea that, meaningful progress, extends beyond just, our reading rate, right? And that we have to sort of set this foundation as a learner in order to be able to make that dramatic progress, like you said. I mean, I've got thinking of a couple kids immediately coming to mind that we've worked with recently where, they needed to change schools, to go to a school that was a little bit more specialized. And, we're certainly starting to see progress in some of their academics, but immediately seeing, they're no longer presenting with anxiety, right? They're no longer having school refusal. A lot of the disruptive behaviors that they're presenting with in the classroom have been eliminated, right? And now, as we're starting to, beginning to see the progress in terms of their academic skills, because we've laid that foundation now where they're actually engaged in learning for the first time in years. Now, when it comes to the sort of the black and white data, right? When you're doing your progress monitoring, what are you looking for to see whether or not this intervention is working, or do we need to tweak things?
Yeah, so we're looking at the skill development first, the targeted skill development or skill mastery. So every student that starts with Redwood, we do a baseline assessment, a battery of baseline assessments to get a really good understanding of where that child's starting. And then the intervention focuses on filling in the most significant gaps first, according to a evidence-based scope and sequence of skills. So it's not random. It's very much like where are the learning is like a ladder, right? So if you have big gaps in those first two rungs, that ladder is wobbly no matter what up here. So it's going down to the very basics, finding all the gaps and then filling them in. So that mastery-based skill development is what we're able to measure session by session. For reading, that's going to be decoding and encoding accuracy. It's going to be, once we see progress there, then we're going to start looking at the oral fluency. Are we getting faster? Not so much about speed, but are we is the process automatic so that we have cognitive energy left over for the comprehension process. And then once you've had 6, 9, 12 months where you see those skills coming in, then you're going to start to see the normed reference, right? We want to start seeing now those percentiles need to start moving in the school testing. That's not going to happen right away,
No.
but it needs to be happening in 6, 9, 12 months, or we need to be changing course and figuring out what's still missing.
Yeah, for sure. No, such an important point, and like doing an evaluation right now, really going back and looking at, what are the, because this is for a kid that has come back. I think we assessed them a couple of years ago. It wasn't me; it was somebody else, in our practice, and really looking beyond the standard scores, right? Because you're chasing a moving target, right? Especially for a kid with dyslexia. Once they get to third or fourth grade, that target for their, typical developing readers is accelerating, right? So it's very hard sometimes to catch those standard scores, but going back and really looking at, like you said, sort of those foundational skills, what have they mastered now versus 2 years ago? Sort of what's the next step in that ladder you described that we need to start working on, is so important. And, thinking about what you said too in terms of the ladder, I really like that analogy because sometimes we'll have kids that get to middle school, and they keep setting these kind of like quote unquote like grade level IEP goals, which I don't know if it's universal, but in California they're required to do that. But they keep sort of pushing kids along while they have these massive gaps in the lower rungs of the ladder, right? And not taking the time to go back and fill those in. And now they're getting to middle school and high school, and the ladder's breaking, right? Because they can't keep up anymore without somebody going back and filling in the holes in their in their literacy skills or writing or math or what have you.
Mhm.
So, yeah, super important. So, if you were to give one piece of advice to a parent who is starting out on this journey, right? They suspect their kid has dyslexia, or maybe they've gotten an assessment, and now that they know that their child has dyslexia, what's the one piece of advice that you think all parents need to hear? And I guess to sort of kind of stack the questions here a little bit, what are some common pitfalls that you'd want to sort of red flag so that they could avoid them?
I think the most important thing is to watch your own anxiety level, that
Mhm.
self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
Because if you see your child struggle, it's hard. It's stressful, it's worrisome. As a mom, I'm carrying worries about my kids all the time. And so I think you have to recognize that and be really careful about projecting your anxiety onto your kid. Because at the end of the day, again, like we said, these are learning differences. I only say learning disabilities in a legal setting when I'm advocating for the
Yeah.
right kind of, intervention. But in real life, these are learning differences.
Yeah.
I know thousands of dyslexic individuals. They're some of the smartest people I know. There's nothing about these learning differences that make you less smart. It just, the way our school system is set up. I mean, before the invention of the printing press, this was not nearly as much of an issue, right? But the way
Yeah.
that our education is right now, it's really hard to be successful without extra support. So check your own anxiety first. Make sure you get support in this process because it is overwhelming. And like I said, a couple of my kids are going through some medical issues this year, and this is very new for our family. I know nothing about any of this, and I need good help. I need experts who have spent their careers dedicated to this to help us, figure out how to support our kids. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't let, oh, it's expensive. Oh, it's hard to find. Don't let kind of the easy disclaimers stop you from taking that step of picking up the phone and calling a place and just asking, sharing a little bit about your child and asking experts for their support on, where they suggest you start. And then very practically, we have 2 free resources for parents that I always, to that question, it's like, this is where I would recommend you start. One is the 6 success tricks, because this is low hanging fruit that can immediately make things feel better for your child and make things feel better for you. So we have a free, version of that. And then we have a free parent support program, those 9 steps that I mentioned that just walk you through exactly like this is what the process looks like. If you take it one step at a time, it's a lot calmer of a process.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I like you really sort of taking some time there to talk about like learning difference versus learning disability, right? Because I have dyslexia. I don't consider myself disabled, and sometimes when I think about it too, it's almost as if the dyslexia doesn't reside just within me. It's sort of in this space between me and a book, right? Because if it wasn't for the book there, I'm not disabled in any other way. Right? So when I've got other ways to be able to write and other ways to be able to access information that's encoded in text, I learn just fine, right? And I'm pretty good at learning, right? But it's this sort of this interaction between my brain and the way the information is presented that sort of creates this kind of quote unquote disability. So that's and then are there things like uh, like pitfalls or things that parents should sort of watch out for or avoid as they sort of enter into this sort of journey of learning how to best support their child's learning?
Yeah, I think asking advice from other parents is really helpful, and also just remember that your child is different, and
Mhm.
that what works for somebody else's budget or calendar or learning profile may not work for your child.
Yeah,
So I think really individualizing the process for yourself. This is it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's you got to pace yourself and really figure out at each stage of your child's educational journey what are they going to need from you. Um, and then, don't be too hands off.
Mhm.
And don't just trust your school or trust somebody because they have a credential. And I have deep, deep respect for schools, so that's no shade towards
Yeah,
schools. I almost every educator I've ever met, there's a very, very few that don't meet this standard. Almost everyone I've met in this space is trying to help kids.
for sure.
So don't fight, don't go in fighting with your school. Don't expect for someone else to come and save you from this or figure this out for you. This is your responsibility as a parent to figure out with your child and use those support systems as partners, but you have to be in the driver's seat.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's great advice and kind of goes a little bit of what you say kind of goes back to something you said at the beginning too, in that, not every intervention is going to work for every kid, right? And so just because my neighbor down the street, intervention A worked wonderful for their kid and their kid also has dyslexia doesn't mean that my kids can respond to it in the exact same way. So no, great advice. So for this has been wonderful, by the way, and I'm very confident that our listeners are gonna, learn a ton from all the information you shared today. Obviously, it just scratches the surface, though. So, where can people learn more about you, learn more about Redwood Literacy? What can they do next in order to learn more about the services that you're providing?
Yeah, one of my favorite things is to tell parents to pick up the phone and call us. You can book it or you can cold call, so whatever works best for you. But you get 15 minutes, with a dyslexia specialist. Again, we've got some of our smartest people. I don't want to say smartest people. Um, We've got just true experts on our phone team who are so empathetic, who are going to listen to what you're experiencing and who can offer you something valuable right away. Again,
Mhm.
whether that's a blog post or a connection with someone in your area. We have relationships all across the US with amazing people doing great work. As or get you connected to Redwood's programming if that's the right fit for you. So pick up the phone and call us. That's the first thing I would say. You can obviously read about us, redwoodliteracy.com. We're on most social platforms. We share on Instagram and TikTok. We're sharing just kind of daily doses of how to support. So you can follow us there if that's something that you do. But I think getting on the phone and talking to somebody, to me as a parent, that's always where I feel like people get the best bang for their buck.
Yeah, no, that's awesome advice. So if you're listening to the podcast right now, as soon as we're done here, pick up the phone and call Redwood Literacy. Kate, I just want to thank you so much, for the time that you've taken today. You're doing a ton of great work, and to carve out a little bit of time to share what you're doing with our listeners is wonderful. I'm sure they took away a ton from our conversation today. I know. I've certainly learned a lot about the work that you guys are doing, and really excited to be able to share Redwood Literacy as a resource for our clients. So yeah, thank you again. I really really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, take care.